Hello folks, hope you're well. So, I just did a video talking about has this summer transfer window been good for Man United? And the answer is pretty much no. It couldn't have been, basically. The reality is, a lot of people are going to say, well, when they said they had no money, they've done pretty well considering. Yeah. When they said they had no money, they were lying. Pretty much. Although I think what they're going to say is they've taken money from next year's budget. Well, again, that's complete rubbish. It's utter nonsense. The reason why we know is because if Chelsea Football Club, if they can basically have the ownership of the club, one of the owners buying the hotel, right, that the club owns, and selling the women's team to themselves to raise money, every other club could have done so. Every other club could have done exactly what they've done. Man United have land, right? They're looking to build a new stadium. They could have sold that land. If they wanted to raise a ton of money, the Glazers could have sold the land that they want to build the next stadium on to Ineos, with an understanding that in 10 years' time, Ineos will sell the land and the stadium back to Manchester United for cost. That way, the club has a huge loan coming in. You could even say in a year's time that will be done, or 2 years' time, or 3 years' time that will be done. How long is it going to take before ground is broken and before most of the work is done? Can Ineos afford to build the stadium at the money which they have themselves? Probably yes. So they could, buy the ground for, let's say, 200 million for the ground, and then build the stadium for 4 billion, whatever, and then sell it all back to Manchester United in the future. But therefore they've raised a ton of money. They've raised a ton of money, haven't they? Really? Even if it's just 200 million. 200 million is enough to buy the extra players that they want to buy. Because we heard from one of the people who does all this transfer stuff, who talks about it, who says he's connected to all these people. I don't know what his name is, I don't care. He's one of them. There's quite a few people that do it. And he said that Ruben Amorim had said that he wanted a right wing back and a midfielder as well, which they didn't get. And obviously an experienced, a top goalkeeper, which also they didn't get. With 200 million more, they could have done that. Other clubs have moaned and bitched about the fact that they can't get players in the country. Again, look at Chelsea. Not just look at Chelsea. Chelsea have done brilliantly well. They've just shown people in the model. They bought Nicholas Jackson for 32 million and have potentially sold him. He's on loan to start with, but with whether it's an option to buy or you have to buy if he does well, if he plays a certain amount of games or whatever, for 75 million. So over double what they paid. Over double. That's well done. Well done to them. And that's what they're doing. They're selling players now. They're selling players that have been at the club, that have had some games, that have certainly been trained in the system that they play, and teams want those players because they know they're bringing good players. And Chelsea now know which players that they bought are suitable for what they want to do moving forwards. So you buy double the amount of players and you keep the ones that are right. what other clubs do is ridiculously slow and stupid in comparison. What other clubs will do is they will buy, they've got a squad, they have maybe 3 or 4 leaving, so they will buy 5 or 6. Okay. So over the next 5 years, they can bring in a whole new squad of players, but it's going to take 5 or 6 seasons to do so. And the problem is, they won't necessarily know which ones are going to fit or not. And because they're bringing in players for now, Chelsea weren't doing that. Chelsea were bringing players in for the future. They weren't bringing players in for now. They were saying, okay, we're going to have a rough couple of seasons, but we're doing this so that we can be competitive in the future. They had a plan and it seemed to be working. They seem they're doing okay. Certainly doing better now than they were a few seasons ago, better than what they were doing last season at this stage. So I wish them well. But other teams could have copied them. If they could do it, then everyone else could have done it. But they haven't. Other teams, Barcelona, have sold off a load of their stuff, but only because they had such a lot of debt. So the clear debt, they've done it. Chelsea didn't do it for that reason. Chelsea did it because they wanted to invest. And they had things they could sell in order to invest, in order to bring in that whole load of players. They had, at least 30 players in the squad. At least 30. And I believe the players who were brought in understood the situation. Understood, okay, you're being brought in for the future, not for now. Some of you will be playing now. Some of you will be affecting the team now. But most, no. If you work hard, you train hard, you will be affecting the team and in the team in the future. But not right now. Those of you that do not work hard, you'll be sold. But you'll come here, you'll train according to the system that we want to play. And so therefore, any other team that plays that system, it's going to look at you and think, oh, actually, that player's already been trained to play that way. So we're going to come and get him. So therefore, yeah, other teams are going to want you because you're being trained in this way. That's all correct. And it works. They've sold a lot of players who have barely played a Premier League game at all and sold them for profit. Certainly haven't taken a great loss on anyone, have they? Apart from the likes of Chilwell and what's his name? The ex-Liverpool. Was it ex-Liverpool? Played for Man City. I can't remember what his name is. Played for Arsenal as well, didn't he? And Chelsea got him, I think. He's been around the block a bit, the older player. And they're trying to get rid of him there because he's on incredibly high wages. But they've got Palmer, they've got some very good young players. Chelsea. Because what they did was they focused on bringing in young players with incredible potential, but that weren't quite there. Some of which they had to pay huge amounts for. Caicedo, they had to pay a lot of money for him. But now he's one of those players who, when he got over his injury, he's been someone who's affected the first team now. Lavia is another one they bought, who is going to be a phenomenal player. If he stays fit. If he doesn't, I imagine they're going to sell him. They will take a loss on him because he was quite expensive. But most of the players they bought weren't. And if I'd have been in charge of Man United during this window, I would have said, okay, we're going to go and look at Eastern Europe. We're going to get players from there. We're going to get players who are willing to work hard and who understand. Yeah. They want to be part of the future of this club. They want to be part of the history of it. See, the point of it is players like Casemiro, Ugarte, because they've been at PSG, Real Madrid, and other players that have been at other big clubs, no, it won't work. Did it as well. Did it's been at big clubs. Now, Did it works hard. Don't get me wrong. I like Did it. But do I think he's good enough? No. I never have had. He's just a blonde, slightly younger version and fitter version than Maguire. And Maguire's still there, for goodness sake. Maguire's going to leave on a free at the end of the season. Another player who's going to leave on a free. Again, that absolutely and totally disgusts me. Harry Maguire knows without a shadow of a doubt that no other team wants him. He knows that. No other team is willing to buy him and pay his wages because they know he's not that good. And he knows it, really. He knows that. He knows he's slow. He knows that he's not. He doesn't compare in any way, shape or form with the better players in the league, better defenders. He knows that. Well, in the depth of his mind, he knows that. But yeah, as I say, United could have done all of that. Crystal Palace could have done all that. Wolves could have done that. Brighton could have done it. Everton could have done it. Everyone could have done it. They could have done what Chelsea did. And none of them have done it. Most clubs have got assets. Most clubs do have now a fit and women's team, so therefore they could sell that back to the club. Or sell it to one of the owners. They could easily do that to raise money, but they won't. Because there's not an awful lot of desire. If there was desire, they would find a way. And I walked past the church today, the one just down the road from me, and as I was walking past it, I realised, I used to pray for the people in that church in the past. I used to at least wish them well. I don't know. I know there's no point at all. I know without a shadow of a doubt there's no point. I know that they are where they are and that's exactly where they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be anywhere else. I don't think they're going to change. I don't think they're going to be of God in any way, shape or form because that desire isn't there. If it was, they would be it. The desire isn't there. And the reality is, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I know up to now, God hasn't been that bothered, particularly about the church. As I say, the church has been waiting for God to do, thinking that God's going to bring some sort of revival. I don't think that's going to happen. So biblically, I know for years, before I understood, I was looking at the last days and saying, well, okay, they're praying for revival. According to the last days of the Word of God, there won't be a revival in the church. There will be a massive falling away. Revelations talks about you can't have the 666 and the mark of God. Why would it say that? Because many people in the church are going to go for the 666, aren't they? Because they're not led by God. They have no desire to be led by God. But they're going to say, when they come to the point where they die, why am I not in heaven? I went to church. Yeah. was saying now, it's irrelevant to me. All of these places, all these churches, they're just buildings where people gather and where people have a sort of religious community centre. That's what they are now. They're just a religious community centre. And so when they do their tea and coffee, I will pop in, but I won't speak about God. There's no point. There's no point sharing anything with them. Oh, I did see some JWs today. First time in months in the high street. And I shared with him about the trees. And about, that it is possible. Because he was talking about the fact it's not possible to eat from the tree of life. And I said, no, it is. I said, oh yes, it is. Otherwise it wouldn't be there. I said about, when the devil said to Eve, didn't God tell you if you eat from the fruit of this tree, you will surely die? As I said, what the devil was basically saying to Eve is that what God meant was you will die straight away, and that was never true. Yeah. So, yeah, I had a conversation with JWs. That's cool. We should see tomorrow what's going to happen. Because, I need to go and get bits. Finally got my card. Bank card. Bank card was cancelled and they had to resend one. When it wasn't delivered on Saturday, it got to the point today when I went down to the bank to get some money. I thought, I've got to do that. So I took my driving licence and got money that way. And it's getting late. Sorry, it's 12:30 now. I said to the clerk, there was only one serving. I said to her, what's going on with this? I said, the person said to me 4 to 5 working days. I said, if I buy something from Amazon, it can be there next day. How can Amazon do that, but the bank can't? She said, well, it takes a day to make the card. I said, don't be silly. I said, how can it take a day to make the card? I said, you can get those computers that can make things from plastic. And it takes about a day to make something that's absolutely amazing. So, of course, the card won't take a day to make that. That's silly. And what's the reason why it still takes 3 to 4 days after it's made? She said, well, because they post it with second class. I said, well, if they do that, it means they don't care about the customers at all. Because obviously, if they say they have to cancel it and replace it, then they know right now that people really need the card. Because if you want to pay for something in the internet, if you're buying something from eBay, Amazon, or someone else, you have to use a card. So therefore, we depend on that card. They know. The banks made it. The world, for us depend on cards. So therefore, So I phoned them up and said to the person, excuse me, no, that's blinking stupid. And I was talking to that bloke for a long time. About at least 40 minutes, really. And I said to the person, I'm not blaming you. You can't do anything. And he said, okay. we will give you £40 for that. I said, okay. He says, well, if you want to, what's it called, complain, then you can do that rather than the money. I said, there's no point. Will they do anything if I complain? He said, probably not. I can't. Yeah. I said, therefore, £40 is good enough. I'll have that, yeah. And about 2 hours after, the card was delivered. Therefore, complain. But complain nicely. Talk to the people, and talk truth to them. And maybe it could help you. Maybe they will give you a bit of money. To say sorry. So therefore, good. That's good enough, yeah. £40? That's good, yeah. I said, okay, that's good enough. I'll have that. Yes, it says, I will have that. Good. And so therefore, I ordered 2 really good bottles of wine. So, that's to be delivered, and they should be absolutely gorgeous. So therefore, that was free. There you go. They would taste better because they were free. So enjoy. I'll speak to you later. Bye bye.